from our shame, from our guilt, O Lord. Cleanse us from our sin, make us holy in your name, in your blood, O Lord. Blot out our offense, make us worthy. Lord, have mercy, we're begging for mercy. Jesus, only you make us worthy. Lord, have mercy, we're begging for mercy. Jesus, only you make us worthy. From our weakness, from our betrayal, cleanse us from our sin, make us holy in your kindness, in your compassion. Blot out our offense, make us worthy. Lord, have mercy, we're begging for mercy. Jesus, only you make us worthy. Lord, have mercy, we're begging for mercy. Jesus, only you make us worthy. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. 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 Lord, have mercy, we're begging for mercy. Jesus, only you make us worthy. Lord, have mercy, we're begging for mercy. Jesus, only you make us worthy.
Murphy's Law. Good evening. That was just a slight distraction. Hopefully that's the only distraction. Thank you for coming out tonight to be led in prayer by the young people of our parish. Tenebrae is a service of light and dark. I experienced it in another church and kind of kept it, and I asked the kids if they liked to do it, and they said sure. So this prayer service is led entirely by our young people, and I hope that you enjoy it. At the end, the church will be in darkness, but when we leave, there'll be some light for you. The candle will come out, and you just process out in silence. Something different. Just sit back and let the Spirit move in our midst while I light the Paschal candle that I forgot. There's always something.
Tonight, we begin our watch. What is it we watch for?
We watch for the peace of God's kingdom around the world, especially those places where war and destruction are real.
We watch for an end to prejudice and hate presented by color, race, religion, gender, ethnicity, or sexuality.
We watch for men and women everywhere to reach out to each other in true harmony, overlooking those things that separate and hurt.
God most holy, we come before you with praise and thanksgiving, wonder and awe at the great marvels you have worked in creation from the beginning of time to the present.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and empty.
And the Spirit of God hovered over the water, stirring and churning, breathing life into the creatures and plants below the surface.
God saw what he created and said, "It is good."
God did not leave the world to its own devices, but sought to redeem the people of the world.
The Lord was determined that the walls of Zion should fall. He measured them off to make sure of destruction. The towers and walls now lie in ruins together. The gates lie buried in the rubble, their bars smashed to pieces. The king and the noblemen now are in exile. The law is no longer taught, and the prophets have no visions from the Lord. Jerusalem's old men sit on the ground in silence, with dust on their heads and sackcloth on their bodies. Young girls bow their heads to the ground. My eyes are worn out with weeping. My soul is in anguish. I'm exhausted with grief at the destruction of my people.
The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light.
And a virgin will conceive and bear a son.
And his name shall be Emmanuel, God is with us.
And the government of the nations shall be upon his shoulders.
And the year of the Lord shall be proclaimed.
They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks.
And the lion will lay down with the lamb in peace.
I saw a new heaven and a new earth.
For the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it.
In the beginning was the world, and the world was with God, and the world was God. God made all things, and without God there is nothing. In God was life, and God's life was the light to all who lived. The true light that gives light to everyone was in the world.
But the world chose not to recognize him. Even though he came to be with his own did not recognize him. Even though he became flesh and dwells among them, they failed to recognize him in their midst. People loved living in darkness more than in the light.
Jesus the Christ was born in Bethlehem of Judea, and wise men came seeking him from the eastern parts of the known world,
bringing gifts of gold
to acknowledge the royal line of Jesus,
bringing gifts of frankincense,
to acknowledge his holiness,
bringing gifts of myrrh,
To acknowledge his sorrow.
The wise men, shepherds, and even the guards worshiped Jesus, born an infant, and they too glorified the name of God.
But in the royal palace of Jerusalem, King Herod raged and stormed at this event and vowed to put death to this newborn king.
Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
The Holy Spirit led Jesus into the desert to prepare him for ministry.
but Satan came to Jesus.
Ah, Son of God, I see you are hungry. Feed yourself by turning these stones into bread.
But Jesus said,
No.
In heaven there was a great sigh of relief.
But Satan was not done.
Son of God, I give you the whole world, but if you bow down and worship me.
Now the world is a splendid thing to look at.
But Jesus said,
No.
Again, there was a sigh of relief from above, knowing Jesus would not fail, would not cave into temptation.
A third time Satan sought out Jesus, took him to the top of the temple, and propositioned him.
Throw yourself from the temple, most holy one, and see if the company of angels descend to save you from hurting yourself.
There was a moment of concern in heaven, as this temptation was not expected.
Jesus looked at Satan.
No!
Satan left, and angels came to care for Jesus.
But Satan was not defeated, but waited for an opportunity and the right person to do his bidding in bringing Jesus down.
John the Baptist appeared preaching and baptizing the area around Jerusalem, proclaiming,
Prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. There is one coming who is far greater than I. one whose sandals I am not worthy of untying. Prepare the way of the Lord.
And Jesus went into the water with John.
Baptize me, John.
John stood motionless, uncertain of what to do.
Baptize me, John.
I baptize you, Jesus of Nazareth.
And suddenly a voice was heard from above.
This is my son, my beloved. Listen to him.
There were those who were threatened by Jesus and the attraction he was becoming among the people.
These leaders began to murmur against Jesus.
Even John, when he was imprisoned by Herod, would come to doubt Jesus, asking his friends,
Is this the one sent by God, or should we look for another?
Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree?
Jesus called some to follow him.
He called out to Peter and James.
Come, I will make you fishers of men and women.
Peter and James put down their nets and followed Jesus.
He then called out to Matthew, the tax collector.
Matthew, come and follow me.
and he too followed Jesus.
Philip and Thomas were among those also called.
Among those called was Judas, who would later betray Jesus.
Altogether, Jesus called 12 to be his apostles.
There was a wedding feast at Cana in Galilee.
Jesus went to the feast with his mother, Mary.
During the celebration, the wine began to run low.
Mary said to Jesus,
They have no more wine.
And Jesus replied,
Why is this my problem?
Mary told the servants,
Do whatever he tells you.
Jesus instructed the servants to take some water from 2 stone jugs used for washing and to present what appeared to be water to the master of the feast.
The master was shocked. This is the best wine I've tasted all day.
this is the first of many miracles of Jesus to be recorded.
But as time went by, more and more of the people questioned the miracles and sayings of Jesus.
How can you raise the temple in 3 days?
By what authority do you speak?
This is Joseph's son?
Just who do you think you are, speaking like God?
And some of the scribes and Pharisees thought to see how they could be rid of Jesus.
One day, a large crowd gathered to hear Jesus speak, and the disciples, noting how late it was getting, asked him,
Jesus, there has to be over 5,000 people here. What are we going to do, as there is not nearly enough food for everyone?
Jesus answered,
Is there any food?
There are 5 small loaves and 2 small fish that a boy has brought with him.
Jesus responded,
Bring the food to me.
Jesus then prayed over the bread and told the disciples to share it among the people.
When they did, there was enough food for everyone, and all 5,000 ate, leaving with enough food left over to fill 12 baskets.
Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they pierced him in the side?
Following this miracle, Jesus and the disciple left.
Jesus then went to be by himself to pray.
When they left that place, they got into a boat to cross the lake.
And a storm arose while they were crossing.
The disciples were afraid.
When they recognized Jesus walking toward them on the lake.
Peter, seeing Jesus walking on the water, got out of the boat and started walking toward Jesus.
But when he realized what he was doing, he lost faith and began to sink.
Then Jesus reached out and pulled him out of the water, asking him,
Why did you doubt, Peter?
As they continued their journeys, they came upon a man born blind.
The disciples asked Jesus,
Who sinned, the man or his parents?
Jesus said to them,
Neither the works of God can now show through him.
And with that, Jesus made some mud and put it on the eyes of the blind.
Then the man washed the mud from his eyes and realized he could now see.
Some doubted, saying,
That's not the man who was blind. He just looks like him.
the man who had been blind, said,
No, it is I.
and those doubted him wondered how it could be.
Still, others asked him,
Who did this?
His response was,
The man called Jesus did this for me.
This infuriated the scribes and the Pharisees, and they questioned at length the man who was blind, and even called his parents to testify against Jesus. They asked him straight out,
What do you say about this man, Jesus? Is he a prophet? How did he do this?
I have already told you, and you did not want to hear. I was blind, and now I see.
In their frustration, they threw the man out.
Then Jesus said,
I have come to open the eyes of those who would see.
to which the Pharisees responded,
Are we also blind?
Jesus responded,
When you were blind, you had no guilt. Now you claim to see, but are blind to what is happening around you. Your guilt remains.
The words echoed through the air.
Your guilt remains.
Your guilt remains.
When the disciples continued their journey with Jesus, they witnessed many wonderful things. But still there were those who were afraid or too timid to come forth.
One of these men was Zacchaeus, a tax collector.
Jesus saw him watching from a tree and spoke to Zacchaeus.
Zacchaeus, come down from the tree. I want to stay at your house tonight and join you and your family for dinner.
Zacchaeus was changed forever.
Sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when the sun refused to shine?
When the disciples continued their journeys with Jesus, they made many wonderful things, but still there were those who were afraid or too. But others could not accept that the Christ had come, that this man Jesus was sent from God, and murmured and plotted against him.
He must be of the devil.
Only Satan can cast out Satan.
And crowds formed, crowds who were angry with his words, crowds who would have Jesus put to death.
They made threats and accusations.
How can this man be a prophet? He is Joseph's son.
Stone him.
There is no truth in him.
Jesus shared many things with his disciples, and one day he asked them,
Who do you say that I am?
One of the disciples answered,
It is said that you are John the Baptist.
Some say you are Elijah.
Others say you are Jeremiah.
Jesus looked at them and asked,
Who do you say that I am?
Peter answered,
You are the Christ, the Son of the living God.
Jesus smiled and said,
Blessed are you, Simon called Peter, for God himself revealed this to you. Further, I tell you that upon your strength I will build my church, and whatever you say in my name will come to pass.
the disciples what was to happen, how he would go to Jerusalem, suffer at the hands of the scribes and Pharisees, and be killed.
Peter was emboldened by Jesus' words to him and said,
God forbid this must not happen.
Jesus responded to Peter,
"Get behind me, you Satan."
Remember that Satan was waiting for an opportunity to get to Jesus.
You are not on the side of God, but on the side of people.
Jesus continued,
Anyone who would be my disciple must take up his cross and follow me. He must be willing to lose his life for my sake.
The disciples tried to understand what Jesus was saying and were overcome with fear.
When Jesus and the apostles entered Jerusalem triumphantly, they were greeted with shouts of Hosanna and cries of Messiah.
but soon the shouts of joy turned to accusations against him.
Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb?
You were not the Messiah.
We have no king but Caesar.
And as they prepared for the feast of Passover, Jesus shared a last meal with the apostles.
At the table, Jesus took bread and wine and offered them to the apostles. This is my body. This is my blood. Each time you gather in my name, remember I am present with you.
One of you at this table will betray me this night.
They were all stunned and asked,
Is it I?
Is it I?
Is it I?
Peter said,
I will never deny you, my Lord, never.
Jesus said to Peter,
Peter, this very night you will deny you know me 3 times.
Then Jesus answered their question.
The one who dips his bread when I do will be the one to betray me.
At that very moment, Judas dipped into the cup as Jesus did.
Jesus said to Judas,
"Do what you must do."
Judas left the table and fled into the night.
He went to the priests of the temple and told them how they might arrest Jesus.
The high priest said to Judas,
You have done well.
And they handed him 30 pieces of silver.
After the meal, Jesus went to the garden at Gethsemane to pray.
Jesus knelt in deep prayer, fearful, anxious.
"Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me, but I do not my will, but yours."
Jesus got up and found James and Peter and John, those he had asked to come with him, asleep.
He said to them,
Could you not watch 1 hour with me?
Just then, Judas, the temple priest, and the soldiers arrived.
Jesus saw them arriving and said,
Here comes my betrayer.
Judas approached Jesus, kissed him on the cheek, and stepped away.
As the soldiers attempted to take Jesus into custody, a scuffle ensued, and one of the apostles severed the ear of one of the soldiers.
Jesus said,
Put away your swords.
And Jesus healed the soldier.
The apostles backed away and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Jesus alone.
Even Peter watched from a distance.
Jesus was taken to trial before the high priest and asked,
Are you the Son of God?
He replied,
You say that I am.
The high priest tore his robes, his anger overflowing.
Enough of this blasphemy, enough! Do we need any more witnesses?
He then asked those gathered around what they thought.
In one accord, they responded,
"Guilty." Jesus was then taken before Pontius Pilate, who asked Jesus about the charges.
Jesus said nothing.
Pilate grew perplexed as his wife warned him about a dream she had about Jesus, and he chose to wash his hands of the issue of Jesus.
I find no guilt in this man. Do with him as you wish.
Then the crowd began shouting for Barabbas, and Pilate became concerned that a riot might break out.
What would would you have me to do? Release Jesus or Barabbas?
Barabbas!
Pilate asked the crowd what he should do with Jesus, and they cried out,
Crucify him! Crucify him!
Jesus was then scourged and led away, and on Calvary they crucified him between two criminals.
He was further mocked and taunted.
So, you are the Son of God?
If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross.
You saved others, save yourself.
Even the words spoken by Jesus from the cross were mocked.
Listen, he calls for Elijah.
Jesus knew that by now everything had been completed. So to make the scripture come true, he said,
I am thirsty.
A bowl was there, full of cheap wine, so a sponge was soaked in the wine, put on a stalk of hyssop, and lifted to his lips.
Jesus drank the wine and said,
It is finished.
Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
And the ground shook. And the ground shook.
And the tombs were opened.
and those who were asleep arose and appeared to many.
And darkness filled the land, even though it was midday.
Finally, one of the soldiers, seeing all that had happened, said,
Surely this man was the Son of God.
They put the body of Jesus in a borrowed tomb, as it was the beginning of the Sabbath.
On the morning of the third day, some of the women went to take care of the body, but found that it was not in the tomb where they had left it.
They were told, according to varying accounts, that he had been raised from the dead.
The women returned to the upper room and told the apostles what had happened to them.
Peter and John, when they heard the news, ran to the tomb and found it empty as they had been told, but found an angel sitting there.
Why do you seek the living among the dead?
They were amazed and astonished at what they had encountered.
Jesus then began to appear to his followers in various places.
At the shore,
On the road to Emmaus,
In the upper room,
The light of the world was in the world, and darkness